Hi everyone, it's Kerry Jeffrey from Emotional Autoimmunity. Welcome to episode 3 of season 2 of the podcast. If you don't know me, my name is Kerry Jeffrey. As I just said, I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, counsellor and coach, and I'm based in Melbourne, Australia. And I work with people all around the world, helping them to provide therapy solutions to the complex emotional issues of chronic illness. And I live with 3 autoimmune conditions, which are celiac disease, antiphospholipid syndrome, and Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And over 5 years ago, I was physically and cognitively disabled. I was unable to work for a good 12 months and found it very difficult to function and look after myself. And so all of the emotional issues of chronic illness are very important to me, both as a therapist and as an individual, because the biggest shock to me was finding out once I became chronically ill that there was absolutely no recognition of the profound and significant impact that becoming chronically ill has on your life, especially emotionally, because of the loss of the self. And you're basically just given a diagnosis and left to try and deal with it on your own in a society that doesn't understand what chronic illness is. And so I want to reach as many people as I possibly can to help them understand that they're not alone and that this is very real. How you feel is very real. And most importantly, it is very normal. So in this episode today, episode 3, I'm going to talk about a topic that's probably going to be triggering for a lot of you. And what I'm going to be talking about is why you need to stop fighting your chronic illness. So probably many of you are already reacting to that and go, oh, what are you talking about, Kerry? Like, oh my God, that'll mean, it'll take over. That'll mean, oh, I'm giving up. It'll roll over. It'll envelop me. I'll become so ill it will all never stop. So there's a whole lot of visceral reactions to this statement. But I want you to bear with me and continue to listen, because as always, there is some method to my madness. There is some logic in here. And we're just going to work through, we're going to unpack this, because this is what I'm trying to do in these podcasts, is to unpack all of these often complex, unconscious issues that get loaded up with habitual patterns of thought. And I'm also doing something a little bit new today. I've decided that I'm also going to make a video of this podcast. So you'll be able to watch the video of this podcast over on my Emotional Autoimmunity YouTube channel if that's something that you prefer rather than listening. So just giving you a few options, mixing it up a little bit. So let's unpack this. Let's unpack this whole concept of fighting the illness. And so where this actually comes from is from our primary medical model of illness, which is I get sick and I need to do something about it. I need to actively do something about this disease to make it go away. And you often see this in people who have cancer, right? We have all of these wars on disease. You have this war on cancer. We see people with cancer describing themselves as warriors. They've got to fight the cancer. They've got to beat the cancer. And there's this whole aspect of fighting the disease in order to win, in order to overcome it, in order to beat it, right? And that can give people, that particular mindset can give people a focus, right? A focus. I know in hypnotherapy, there's things that we're taught to help people with cancer or other diseases, which are potentially terminal, to imagine the body's immune system as little soldiers, like, going out there and killing off the cancer cells and things like that, to actively help the person boost their immune system so that they can overwhelm or beat the cancer cells or whatever the issue is. And this has sort of been picked up because when you get chronic illness, right, and there is no model, there is no framework, there is no map to follow, there is nothing really out there. All we've got is these old patterns, already established patterns or beliefs or things. And unconsciously, what happens, this is the way that the unconscious mind works, all right? It'll help to understand it like this. So the way that our whole mind works, if you think about the conscious mind, and the conscious mind can only take in, 7 to 8 bits of information at any one time before it becomes overwhelmed by things. Like, for example, I'm sitting here now in my little chair, and if my conscious mind was aware of the sensation of the clothes on my body, all the stimuli coming in, so I've got the light through the window, I've got some nice essential oils burning off in the corner, I've got all things around, I've got the necklace around my neck, I've got all of these other things going on. Temperature, sensation, sight, sounds, all of those things going on. If my conscious mind became focused on that, it would quickly become overwhelmed by the texture of the clothes on my body or the weight of the thing around my neck or all of these different things. So it's focused very much on only what it needs to focus on. So for example, at the moment I'm focusing my thoughts around this topic. I'm focusing on the concepts I want to get across and all of the information that I'm pulling out of my brain from things that I know about this. But the subconscious mind is like a 5-year-old child. So the conscious mind is like a little scientist. It really doesn't have any emotion attached to it at all. It's just observing, thinking, doing, producing, getting facts, getting figures, pulling things out of the mind, getting the tools that it needs. It's like a little scientist that's just sitting there calculating all of the different permutations of the things that can happen. But the subconscious mind is like a 5-year-old child. And so the subconscious mind holds all of the emotions, it holds all of the experiences that we've had from the time of our birth up until the present moment. And I've seen people recall remarkable things and find things from their emotions through the work that I do. So all of that stuff is in the subconscious mind, and because it is like a 5-year-old child and it believes the things that you think, all right, while it seems like a good idea to fight an illness, right? Oh, I've got this thing and it's overwhelming me and it's making my life miserable, so I've got to beat it, right? I've got to beat it, I've got to fight it, I've got to emerge victorious over it. I'm not going to let this thing win, right? The minute that we tag something in our conscious mind as an enemy, the subconscious mind immediately perceives it as a threat. All right, that is what happens. When we think about war, when we think about an enemy, when we think about something that could destroy us or bring us down or ruin our lives, that subconscious mind that is like a little child becomes immediately overwhelmed by that. It has all of these links to what fighting something is, what an enemy is, what a war is. So its response, because remember, it holds all of the emotions, its response is going to want to be fight, flight, or freeze, because there is a perceived threat. So if you are fighting an illness, it's going to be a lot harder for you to reduce your stress levels and to find enjoyment and peace in your life, because all of your focus and all of your attention is going to be on beating this disease. Now, while in a relatively short term, and I'm only saying that as opposed to chronic illness, which at the moment, chronic autoimmune conditions are for life and there is no cure. If you are fighting something with a relatively good chance of beating it, like a cancer that is not too far advanced, then in a relatively short time frame, there is the possibility that you can get back to normal. And once you've gone long enough and you are declared cancer free, of course, you've always got the whole thing of cancer hanging over your head, right? But there is that chance that you can get your life back to normal. You can perhaps get back to how you were. Now, I know that is not always possible. You know, all of the things that you go through to fight cancer can have very damaging adverse effects, especially radiation treatments can damage nerves, and you know, chemotherapy can have different effects and impacts on other organs of the body and things like that. So as opposed to the long term, it does seem like fighting something like cancer can motivate you, like can get you, like, yes, I'm going to do this, and it's going to get you through the terrible treatments and all of the things that you've got to endure, because it's easier to get through something if there's the possibility of light at the end of the tunnel, right? If you know that something has a potential end date. And I know there are a lot of people, you know, that have been through cancer, and I'm probably making it sound like it's a lot lighter than it is, and it's not. It's a very devastating disease, but I'm just using it as a general comparison point, right? So fighting something in a short term is more doable because there is potential end. Now, let's suppose that with chronic illness, which is ongoing, at the moment, incurable, and something that you have to manage on a daily basis. So, with the way our mind works, fighting something that literally cannot be beaten is counterproductive if you really think about it logically. Like, it can't be cured. So by fighting it, what am I actually achieving? What am I actually getting done? I'm keeping myself in this fight, flight, or freeze mode, which will increase my stress response, which will increase the inflammation, and which will be detrimental to the quality of my day-to-day life. So a lot of people at this point are probably thinking, oh God, you know, what do I do? What's the option then? What do you do, Kerry? You just give up, do you? Do you just roll over and just give up, and you don't try anything, and you just let the illness just take you? Like, just why even try? You know, why even bother? And like, no, that's not what I'm saying. That's a very black and white, all or nothing thought process that's going on. It's like, well, if I can't do one thing, then the opposite of that must apply, and that's not what actually happens, right? There is a middle ground. And when it comes to chronic illness, we are in it for the long haul, right? This is the rest of our lives that we're talking about. And so what do we want for our lives? I mean, what do you want for your life? Obviously, you want to live the best possible life that you can. You want to feel as happy, you want to feel as healthy, you want to have as much energy, you want as much ability, no matter what your physical situation is, to find some peace and some joy and some pleasure, and happiness in your life as you possibly can. And war is not the way to achieve that, right? War is a constant fight and a constant struggle and a constant battle where you are actively engaging with the enemy on a daily basis, trying to ascertain if you are winning or losing. And that is really no way to live. So I can only go from my own experience and the experiences that I've had in working with people with chronic illness to give you another alternative. And that alternative is finding a way to live peacefully, to coexist peacefully with this illness, because it is not going anywhere. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't influence it. That doesn't mean that you cannot improve your health. I mean, I know that for a fact. I am here, I am talking to you now, I am working again, I am doing things that I did not think I would be able to do again 5 years ago, when I thought my life was over and I was going to stay permanently disabled and probably end up living with my elderly father, trying to get a disability pension or some way to support myself, right? My life has improved by the actions and interventions that I've taken. And that is something that has been very, very worthwhile for me. And so I'm passing on to you, or attempting to pass on to you, the things that I know have worked, because I've used them myself and I've taught them to my clients, and they in turn have used these tools and skills and have seen their life improve. Now, this doesn't mean that you miraculously get better. It depends on the illness that you have. It depends on the amount of damage that was inflicted on your body and the organs of your body before the illness was actually diagnosed. And we all know that that can take many, many years and many doctors in some cases to even get a diagnosis. And in the meantime, the ongoing autoimmune attacks are still going on and your body is being damaged. So it all depends on your individual conditions. So let's talk about some of the people that I've helped to understand this concept and how it's helped them, right? So, for example, I was working with a very beautiful young mother who has multiple health issues, who suffered from terrible surgery to her spine that went wrong. She had septicemia to the point that she nearly died. And at the time that we started working together, she was bedbound, as she is still mostly now. But she was in a highly anxious state. She was hypervigilant of her body. There was no joy in her life whatsoever. She was stuck in bed. She has to use a feeding tube because her digestive tract is just so affected that she can't have anything really by mouth except for water and some fluids, that even that in limited amounts. So, you know, she has things around her that she's on that need to monitor her body and need to feed her and need to hydrate her and things like that. She has 3 young children. She has a lovely husband and she has very supportive parents, but there was absolutely no joy in her life. She could barely sleep. She was in a constant state of anxiety. She was suffering from PTSD and trauma because of the medical interventions and things that have gone wrong in hospital. So most of it was medically induced, that the trauma that she had. And so all she was wanting, you know, her goals seemed very small, but they were still very significant. She wanted some peace, right? She wanted to stop feeling so anxious all the time. She wanted to get out of her trauma. And so that's what we did. We worked on removing the PTSD, which was very successful, removing the trauma and getting her connected back into what was available to her. So this is the relevant point that I want you guys to understand. No matter where you are with your illness, you can make everything so much harder for yourself by the way that you think about the illness, by not wanting it to be there, by not wanting your body to be doing whatever it is that your body is doing, by fighting it, by resisting it, by pushing against it, by feeling trapped by it, by feeling overwhelmed by it, by feeling that you are the victim of the illness and just not wanting it to be there and fighting it and fighting it and fighting it. And that is ultimately exhausting. And so this is exactly the situation that my client found herself in. And she was exhausted by this fight. And she had nothing left to give. And she was at the point where emotionally, like she was a wounded animal stuck in a trap that she could not get out of. And there was no joy in her life. There was no peace in her life. There was nothing that gave her any sort of satisfaction, or her children or her husband, nothing. Every day, every night was just trauma, pain, anxiety, dreading having to be rushed off to hospital again, and plus all of the mounting cost of the medical bills and worrying about that and how they were going to be able to afford for all of the interventions and all of her care. And so by the time we finished our work together, and she had finally accepted the illness, and this was the turning point. Because when you stop fighting and you can accept something, the reality of what it is, that this is what I have and this is the way that it is, that it puts you back in control. Because once you start to accept that here is my situation, it allows that amazing problem-solving, creative mind of yours to kick into gear and start coming up with solutions to help yourself feel better. So once you get out of the war zone, right, once you can actually start to relax, because in the war zone, you are fighting every minute of every day for your life, which is ultimately exhausting and self-defeating. But once you accept the reality of the situation, it gives you that opportunity to step back and go, okay, what am I going to do about this? Like, what can I do about this? And then things start to happen. Then things start to change, right? Because one of the things that we do to ourselves that we would never do to anybody else that we love or care about, right, is we abandon ourselves to the wolves of the fear, and we step in and we actively participate in pulling ourselves down. So what do I mean by this? So you're laying there in pain and you are focusing on the pain and you're telling yourself, oh my God, this is never going to stop. This is never going to stop. It's just continue to get worse. I can't bear this. I can't bear this. I can't stand this. I can't stand this for another minute. I can't go on like this. This is just, if this is going to be the rest of my life, I can't do this. This is terrible. This is horrible. This is never going to stop. It's never going to end. It's never going to end. And you say all of these things, and your subconscious mind, that 5-year-old child subconscious mind, is listening and believing all of that. And it is telling you, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, you're right. This is never going to end. This is never going to end. This is just going to keep getting worse and worse. And no, you can't bear it. You can't bear it. And it will give you all of the chemical reactions and all of the stress and all of the panic and all of the anxiety, all of the overwhelm that comes with that, and it makes it so much worse. And if you knew anybody else who was feeling afraid and saying to you, I don't think I can go on, I don't think I can bear this, I'm not strong enough for this, would you sit there and say to them, yeah, that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. You're not strong enough. This is going to take you down. You know, you're probably going to end up killing yourself. You may as well just give it up now. Just give it up now. Like, you would never do that to anyone else. Fear needs comfort, right? If you were talking to somebody else who was in self-doubt or in emotional pain, you would comfort them. You would offer them support. You would remind them about who they really are, that they are lovable, that they can deal with this, that it's okay. I'm here with you. I'm going to stay here with you. It's going to be all right. You don't have to do this on your own. So I want you to think about that. When you're laying there in bed at 3 o'clock in the morning on those long, dark nights of the soul, and thinking about all of those big, scary what ifs, like, what if this keeps getting worse? What if we lose all of our money? What if my partner leaves me? What if I won't be able to work? What if, right? Scaring yourself, terrorizing yourself, just making everything so much worse. You need to stop torturing yourself, right? Because when you're going to war with an illness, that's pretty much what you're doing. You are scaring yourself. You are making the illness so much bigger and so much more powerful and so much more impactful than it needs to be. And you're not trying, or you're not attempting to accept the reality and then integrate it into your life as another thing that you need to adapt to. And if I can get back to the client that I was telling you about, did she make some miraculous recovery or anything like that? Well, no, that was way beyond the scope of the work that I can do. But I can tell you what did happen, right? Once she started to relax, once the trauma was gone, once she'd accepted that this was where she was, and she took full responsibility for comforting herself and talking kindly to herself and soothing herself when she started to feel afraid and overwhelmed, and really started to treat herself like somebody else that she loved, not somebody else that she cared about, someone that she had compassion for. When she stopped hating her body and blaming her body for doing this to her, understanding that the illness and the surgeries that she'd been to were just horrible cosmic car accidents of life. It wasn't her fault. She didn't do anything to deserve it, to just accept the fact that it had happened, that it couldn't have happened any other way. Literally, it could not have happened any other way, because we have this weird idea that somehow we can go back and change the past, which we can't. The only thing we can change about the past is how we feel about ourselves in the past. So once she started to do this, a lot of that anxiety and all of that tension and all of that trauma was gone. The energy that she was using to manage the anxiety and the trauma was now available to her, which meant that she was able to get out of bed and go out and be in the living room and be with her family, and that she was actually able to get out in the wheelchair, to go outside with her husband and take the children to the park and be part of the family again and join the family at mealtime, even though she couldn't eat. And what was the most wonderful thing for her was that she was able to start creating her crochet again, and she was actually making some blankets for children who have severe and profound chronic illnesses and terminal illnesses. And so to be able to do her craft again and to be able to make those blankets was the most wonderful thing for her. You know, she finally felt that she was contributing again and that her life had purpose again and it had meaning. And so even though she is still mostly bedbound, she feels so much better. She's enjoying the moments in her life, and she's now available to all of the things that are around her, beautiful children, a lovely husband, her wonderful parents. and she can be at peace in her body, right? And being able to be at peace in her body and without all of that trauma, with all of that anxiety, without fighting the things that were happening and resisting them and not wanting them to be there all of the time, now means she's in a much better place to speak with all of the specialists that she has to deal with because of the multiple complex health issues she has, and make better choices, right? Make the medical choices that are going to give her the most value. So she is back in control. So I want to invite you to think about laying down your guns, right? Stop fighting the illness. It's not going to go away. This is not something that you can 100% overcome. It doesn't mean your life can't get better, but you can't create the solutions and the daily positive action habits that you need to implement that are going to give you the maximum health and happiness that's possible for you now. I'm telling you from my experience that fighting my illness has not got me where I am today. It hasn't got me that peace. It hasn't got me the better health and the better feeling that I've got today, because one of the first things that I knew that I needed to work on was accepting the illness, which meant facing the grief and processing my grief at the loss of the life that I had before, about accepting that my body is not my enemy. My body doesn't want this illness either, but if I work with my body, if I give it what it needs to create healthier cells, those healthier cells create healthier organs because our body is constantly replacing itself, which means that I can become healthier, I can get more energy, I can get more function, especially the way that I manage my thoughts and my minds. I don't allow those what if stories. I stop them in their tracks. I refuse to frighten myself and abandon myself to the wolves of fear and let them rip me apart. I offer myself comfort and reassurance. And I say things to myself like, when I've got a scary symptom that comes back, as it does, because chronic illness, like, not going away. Flares happen. It's there. I'm living with these three conditions. They are not going away. I am not cured. There are going to be times when it's going to come out, and I need to manage that. And how I manage that, a lot of it is how I talk to myself. So I step in with comfort and reassurance. So I say to myself, this is okay, Kerry. You've experienced this before. You've had this pain, you've had this symptom, you've had this issue before. You were all right then. You're going to be okay now. It is going to pass. It is going to get better. You can rest. You know what to do to look after yourself. So that's what I'm inviting you to do. I can only point out the benefits to you, but you're the one who's got to be willing to do it. And I know that sometimes, fighting the illness is another way that we stay in that sort of denial of that acceptance that we are now chronically ill. And it's perfectly okay to do that. And you can stay there as long as you want to stay there. You'll emerge when you're ready, if you're ready to emerge. And if you're ready to emerge, then I want to invite you to try and shift into acceptance and the practical reality of this is where you are right now, and especially to step in with that comfort and reassurance. Now, the only way that I would say, if you want to keep the chronic illness warrior tag for yourself, and there is nothing wrong with that at all, is if you find it personally empowering. So if you find it personally empowering and it gives you that feeling of control and having that affirmation in yourself that I am a chronic illness warrior makes you feel stronger and more capable and more in control and more able to manage your illness. And hang on to that, because that's gold. That is absolute gold for you. And there's all these mind shift things, whatever it takes to get through the day, to help yourself feel as good as you possibly can. By all means, use that. So if chronic illness warrior works for you, more power to you. Take that, use it. That is fantastic. But if you feel stuck, that you're fighting the illness, and that fighting the illness feels like a war, right? And it's draining you and it's dragging you down, and all you're focusing on is that fight, the fight to beat it, the fight to overcome it, so that is all you think about, to the point where it's raising your stress and it's exhausting you, and you're not available to all of the good things that are around you already. And you're scaring yourself with these what if stories. But then I want to invite you to rethink that. I want to really invite you to think about laying down your guns and accepting this, that it is part of your life now, and this is the way that it is, and I can make it better for myself or I can make it worse for myself. And that is a choice. That absolutely is a choice. And to really move in with the comfort, right? To really treat yourself as you would anybody else in this situation. And if you want to get a really simple, powerful tool that's not going to be a big investment for you, then I invite you to go over to my website at Emotional Autoimmunity, look in products. There is an amazing product there for you. It's the relaxation hypnotherapy relaxation bundle. All right, it has got a 40-minute hypnosis recording with me with wonderful waves. It will relax the mind and body. And it's got a PDF and audio book that is going to give you some powerful, effective strategies to manage these stressful, scary thoughts, right? So it's great, practical things that you can implement now, and it's only $25 Australian. So it's a great resource to use. Go over to my website, get that, right? You can listen to the hypnotherapy, listen during the night before you go to sleep. Doesn't matter if you fall asleep in the middle, your subconscious mind will still be listening. It's going to help you get that nice, deep relaxation. There's lots of powerful hypnotic suggestions that I've embedded into that are going to help your body to relax and connect to its natural ability to heal. And when you're feeling more relaxed and you sleep better, you can deal with life a lot more easier. And you can also get those practical strategies. It's really simple. It's really easy. Head over to the website and download your copy now. That is really going to help you. I hope you found this podcast helpful. If you like it, please think about subscribing, and I would love you to leave a review. I know that I'm bringing up complex topics, but I know also that these are the emotional hooks that we get stuck on. So keep an open mind. I know these things work. I know they've worked for me. I know they work for my clients. But ultimately, you are the only one who can do what's right for you. So thank you for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for listening. I'll be back in a couple of weeks with another podcast for you. So bye for now.